For the Unit 7 review, I'm just going to go over these problems with you guys to help you prepare for the test. Please make your own notes if you can't print. It is okay that if you don't have a printer, you can just write it on your own paper and then use it for reference. Okay? So first, the question says, select all that apply. Find the vertex of this parabola. Does the parabola have a minimum or maximum? State the line of symmetry and state the x-intercepts. So let's use a few highlighters here. So first, the vertex is either the highest or lowest point. So in this case, it's going to be this low point, which would be 3, -1. So that's your vertex. Okay? Well, since it's a low point, that means it is also a minimum. Okay, the line of symmetry always goes through the vertex as a vertical line. So this orange line goes through x at 3. So I'm looking for x equals 3. And then lastly, the x-intercepts of this graph or this parabola is right here. That would be 2, 0 and 4, 0, which would be the last option. So this would be like a 4-point problem since you would be selecting 4 answers here, answering 4 questions. Moving on, now these two, I would take your time with. If you need to skip it on the test, skip it, go back to it later. But first and foremost, the first thing you need to know is the formula. X equals -b over 2a. That helps find our vertex. Okay. All right, so there's our formula. That f of x you know is y. We label a, b, and c, where a is 1, b is 2, c is -3. We just ignore the x's. We don't use those x's for a, b, and c. We plug it in, so -2 over 2 times a is 1. We simplify, so 2 times 1 would be 2. And when I divide, we get -1. So you have to understand that x is -1. So for my vertex, I know this much. To find the y, what we did, this was way back in the second lesson, 7.2. When we looked at the formula, we looked to see is there a number in front of x squared, and there's just a 1. It's invisible. But here we have a 2, not invisible. So we're going to put parentheses around that x. So -1 goes into x, goes into x again with parentheses. Now this right here means -1 times -1. So a negative times a negative would be a +1. So -1 squared is 1. The calculator will tell you it's -1. That is incorrect. You have to put parentheses around that -1 in the calculator and then hit the 2 button for squaring it. But it is a +1. We multiply this, we get -2 minus 3. 1 minus 2 is -1. Bringing down the -3, -1 minus 3 is -4. So my vertex is -1, -4. So I'm going to plot that point. So right here, we'll put -1, -4. Okay. Then, to get the rest of our points, if you remember, we use the pattern 1, 3, 5. We multiply by the a value, which in this case is 1. So it's just going to be 1, 3, 5. So I go up 1, right 1, up 1, left 1. And that way I have a very symmetric graph. Okay, it's even on both sides. From the new points, we're going to go up 3, right 1, up 3, left 1. And then we're going to go up 5 over 1, and then up 5 left 1. Then we can draw that U shape. Okay, number 3. We'll use this part here. So number 3, we have our formula, y equals negative 3x squared plus 6. I know it says f of x here, but that's just y. We label a in front of x squared. There's no x in the middle, so there's no b, and then c is the last one. Okay, which means if there's no b, b is 0. So step 1, plug it into this formula. Okay, we just said b was 0 over 2 times negative 3. Well, 0 can't be negative, it's neutral, so it's just 0. And 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. If I divide these, we get 0. So right now, I know my vertex is 0, comma something. To figure out that y value, we go back to this equation. We find the x. Is there a number in front? Yes. Because there's a coefficient or a number in front, we put parentheses around the x. And that 0 goes into x. Just plug it in. So negative 3 times 0 squared plus 6. 0 squared is 0 times 0, which is 0. Negative 3 times 0 is 0, plus 6. And that would just be 0 plus 6 is 6. So here, my vertex is 0, 6. So 0, 6 would be right here. I write out the pattern, 1, 3, 5. And I have to multiply by the a value. So I multiply by negative 3. This gives me negative 3, negative 9, negative 15. From the vertex, I'm going down 3, right 1, down 3, left 1. From the 2 new points, I now go down 9. Over 1, and then over 1 as well. So then I can't fit 15, obviously, so that's fine. Just leave it off. And draw your U shape. Now, for the last one on this page here, we have to match this graph with this one. Okay, I'm going to tell you a shortcut here. When you look at the problem and you see that you have the a value, no b value, and a c value, this means that b is 0, your vertex will always be 0 and then whatever c is. Okay? Because if I put in that 0 like I did for number 3, I put that 0 on top. 0 divided by anything is 0. So if I put the 0 in, I'm going to say 0 divided by 2 times 1 is going to be 0. Cancels this part out. So you're just left with 4. So I'm looking for 0, positive 4, so that one and that one. So it can't be this one. My a is a positive 1, which means the parabola opens up. So it's probably this one. This one's opening down. Okay? And if I check my 1, 3, 5, multiplying by 1, I get 1, 3, 5. So if I go up 1, I land there on the parabola. So this is A. Okay? So 4 and 3, very similar. They have A and C, no B. A and C, but no B. So you see that it was 0, and then your C, or 6. Okay, moving on. Okay, number 5. Okay, this was 7.3 lesson, so all of this is 7.3. These were you're just solving equations, but you're square rooting at the very end. So I asked, like, can I add or subtract something? Yes, I can add 144. So x squared equals 0 plus 144 is 144. Okay, there's nothing to divide by. There's no number in front. So then the last step is to square root both sides to get rid of that exponent too. And when we square root something in an equation, we put plus or minus. And the square root of 144 is plus or minus 12. So that would go with the last choice. Okay, and number 6, add or subtract. So we add 147. 3x squared equals 0 plus 147 to 147. Here we can divide because there is a number in front of x, which is 3. So this cancels out. We have x squared. Divide, we get 49. We square root both sides to get rid of the exponent too. And we get plus or minus 7. In number 7, very similar to number 5, we're just subtracting 3. So x squared equals 81. We cannot divide, nothing right here, but we square root to get rid of the exponent, and this would be plus or minus 9. So a positive 9 and a negative 9. For 8, 9, and 10, these 3 came from 7.4. So these are factoring, which is the x factor. Sometimes regular. These are regular x factor. They have a 1 in front of x squared. This is bottoms up because there's a number greater than 1 in front of x squared. So for 8, 1 times 24 is 24. Okay. We're trying to get to 11. Okay. And if you have your factor sheet handy, I know it is kind of hard to see, but you would go to 24. Okay? And you would see 4, 6, 3, 8, 2, 12, 124. Which one of those could add to be 11? And it would be 3 and 8. So 3 times 8, 24. 3 plus 8, 11. All right, so we write it in factored form. Then we solve. So solving was the new part of this chapter. So we say equals to 0. And then we do what they call the zero product property. So x plus 3 equals 0. X plus 8 equals 0. So to solve this one, I would subtract 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Here I subtract 8, and 0 minus 8 is negative 8. So I'm looking for negative 3 and negative 8, and that would be my second choice. In number 9, we're doing x factor again. So 1 times 15 is 15. Trying to get to 8. So on the factor sheet, these are your factors of 15. So 1 times 15, 3 times 5. And 3 and 5 can add to be 8. So I write it in factored form. And then to solve, I set equal to 0. And then I set each set of parentheses equal to 0. and I solve it. So to solve for x, I subtract 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. I subtract 5 here, and x would be negative 5. So negative 3, negative 5. So we would get the last choice. Okay, number 10. This is bottoms up. Okay, because A, B, C, A is greater than 1. Okay, so 2 times 21 is 42. To get to 13, 42, the factors are 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, 6 and 7. So the only one that could add to be 13 is 6 and 7. So I write it in factored form. Because it's bottoms up, I have to divide by that first number, 2. So here, this can divide to be 3. This, I can't divide, so I bring the bottom number up in front of the x, so 2x plus 7. Okay, so this is everything you learned in Unit 6. Now I set equal to 0 in Unit 7, and we solve. So here I would subtract 3. For this one, I would subtract the 7. 2x equals negative 7. I would divide by 2. So my answer here is negative 7 over 2 and negative 3. So that would have to be the last example, or the last choice. All right, I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to make a second video for the second half to kind of split up the work a little bit.